Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello. I think this is gonna work. One shot. Hopefully none of my shit fucking dies on me, bro. I'm a little sweaty. I'm a little out of sorts, but that's genuine. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get it. Hello. My name is Timothy. I'm finally, or Timothy, Timoteo, Timo, TT. That's a new one. I didn't know there were more ways to say my name. I guess there is. But yeah, my name is Timothy. This is I believe this is finally my second installment of my Pozo Ponderings. I'm actually finally back in my Pozo here, trying to shelter from the sun. Might be squinting a little bit because the sun is shining on my bright white wall. This is a bit of an impromptu, spur of the moment installment. I tried to write up a blog about this subject last night, and it didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to. I guess this is one of those where it's better to verbally express myself versus trying to do it all in words. But we'll see how long this takes. I think I have more of a beard now since my last installment. I have some terere I made, but I kind of fucked up the bombilla, so it's not quite what I wanted to be, but que sera, sera. I will find a way to survive. But with that, I think I kind of just get started and see where I end up. And see, my blog post is pretty rambly, so we'll see if this is any better or any worse than that. But I think basically the idea I want to talk about today is based around a phrase that I've certainly heard other places, and I am certainly not the originator of, but that's been pretty helpful to me recently. And basically, the way it goes is that if you focus on your flowers, the bees will come. Which, on the one hand, of course, is good gardening advice, which I hope to start a garden here soon. But on the other, more abstract sense, is I think very good life advice, and a phrase that I've been turning back to both in this experience specifically and just in life in general, as I kind of look back on my life and my various experiences and various different thought processes. Um, and so I guess I'll just start with my own experience, and depending on where I end up, this could very easily detour into a talk about religion or the meaning of life or society as a whole, or any of those simple matters. So we'll just kind of see where it goes. But I will start from a personal perspective and kind of abstract from there, maybe with some lessons learned at the end. But how this phrase kind of shows up for me, or kind of going back to the beginning, I guess I'll speak about my personal upbringing. From my personal perspective, right? I think this is a blog for my perspectives, and not necessarily to speak other people's stories for them. So I'll try and balance that, and try to give some broad strokes and not take up too much time on this. But for a variety of reasons that weren't really in my control growing up, as a kid, I grew up pretty isolated, I would say. Not having between like fifth grade and high school thereabouts. Certainly, I was friendly with people in school, or in a middle school, high school, but I wouldn't have considered myself to be friends with people. Um, People who I do things after school with or have a life with outside of this kind of social context. again, for a variety of reasons, for family kind of dysfunction, economic reasons, and for a whole other host of things that, whatever the case might be, my, middle school, my adolescent brain decided that this wasn't a time or a place to try and invite friends over to my house or try and make those connections. Um, and of course, looking back, I think in some hand, right, there could be positives to this, and there were. I think it has grown, has made me into a very independent person, very kind of self-directed, self-starting, very interested in trying to figure things out for myself rather than trying to lean on others, which has its good parts and bad parts. I think it's made me very intentional. I think growing up, I really only had myself to talk to a lot of times, or try to problem solve or make meanings of the circumstances I was living in. Um, so I think that was a big root in the kind of processes and the kind of intention weight I put on thinking through things and thinking through the root causes of things and the context and the circumstances surrounding things. I think it's something I've tried to find. I find a lot of value and oftentimes joy in as well. And I think it's also just made me find a lot of power and individuality as well. Over the years, I think that's been a little more. It's taking a little more time to figure out. But that all to say that there's certainly some benefits to this upbringing. But one can intellectualize it and do the pros and cons all you want. But at the end of the day, on the other end of things, um, I was a kid who, in one way or another, didn't uh, get the sort of connection and attention and love that a kid of that age would expect or would want. And so I believe, understandably so, I think that uh, created a lot of insecurity surrounding this individuality or this kind of individual existence I lived in. Um, and this, I don't know, maybe the shame as well. Of course, always wondering why I couldn't be closer with people than maybe I wanted to be, or instead of maybe finding pride in this individuality, and the good parts of this. I think I definitely was one to focus on um, the negative sides of this feeling, these feelings of isolation, of feeling that there was something wrong with me, that you know uh, caused me to be in this position more so than the circumstances I found myself in. And as that is to do during the angsty, awkward, uncertain years of middle school and high school, I think that definitely did a number on my mental health for sure. Um, I think it made me find a lot of control and passion for education, kind of being the one thing that I feel like I had control over. And so I think that served me well in a sense as a sort of coping mechanism. But again, I think just the perspective it had on this kind of individuality, I think, warped into a sense of shame, of uncertainty, of just general dislike towards myself, and the sense of failing or the sense of lacking on my part, as a cause for not being able to have all the things I wanted to have. And I think on the other side of that coin, right, um, the other side of feeling like you don't have what you need to get what you want, I think it necessitates this externalization of value and of validation, which you know exists already without this negative introspection, the self doubt, this insecurity that I kind of put on myself. I think just being uh, someone in society, especially as a teenager growing up, I think we get pushed, we get pushed a lot, we get sold a lot of these externalized sources of value, whether it be in the clothes you wear, or who you should or should not date, or the job you should or should not have, or what career is valuable, and what career isn't, and how what you should strive for. And if you just do this, if you just do that, then you will be happy, you'll be content. And as those goalposts kind of move, I think that unending sense of insecurity, and the constant need to do more, the kind of the sand shifting beneath your feet, so to speak. One could argue that is a core tenet of this, maybe this economic societal system we live under. That's not exactly the screed I want to make in this video, but I can certainly see an argument to be made on that. But suffice it to say, I think that these feelings of externalized value, of wanting people to want me, and to feel like, even if I lost myself in the process, this is me looking back. Even if I lost myself in like what I wanted and who I was, and at least that might be better than losing whatever connection I could get from the people around me, or maybe I could get this kind of this hypothesized, not maybe not hypothesize is the right word, but like this idea of this life that I wanted, that I kind of created in my head, with the friends, and the activities and the clubs and the after school things and the weekends and the trips, and that kind of human closeness that I've come to so value. And so again, like I think that brought in a lot of stress on my part. I've always, there's always more to do. There's always something. There's always something I'm not doing. There's always some way I'm failing. I'm not living up to this. There's always this sort of insecurity of like, oh, I should be doing more. And why can't I like these things that other people like? If it's going to clubs or sports, or if it was in college, all the kind of college things, that all the college partying and social things that people do, that I just really wasn't naturally inclined to do. Again, I felt I kind of saw that as a personal failing. And so if I could just let go of whatever I was holding within myself that was preventing me from doing these things, then I could finally have the friends I want, or the relationship I want, and that these things outside of me would make me happy, and would give me the sort of validation and security that little 8-year-old or 10-year-old or 13-year-old Timothy was hoping for. And I do think, I do agree to an extent that we still have that little kid in us, and oftentimes a lot of our current problems can be, their root causes can be found in whatever that little kid didn't end up having, or the problems that they faced. And so this kind of shadow followed me throughout a good chunk of college, I would say. These ideas, this wrestling with perfectionism and insecurity, and just this this internal turmoil, this internal struggle of like who I was innately, and maybe who I was trying to become, quote unquote, and when the parts of me I was trying to push away or push down, to try and get to that place. And of course, COVID happened, end of freshman year, all the sophomore year. So that certainly didn't help things. And then really it was kind of junior year when I slowly started to tease these things apart, and it kind of took me burning out. I was doing like 5 different things at once, when I was kind of like, I just can't go on anymore. And I was starting to do this introspection. I was eventually finding people, slowly but surely, who kind of saw value in me, as I worked to understand who I was genuinely, my authentic self. And then of course my dad passes away after that junior year, pretty abruptly, and that really, it wasn't sort of a flip of a switch, so to speak, but it certainly accelerated the process, and put an added weight into this work I was doing to try and figure out, what's the meaning of all this? Why am I here? Why has this happened to me? Um, and I think one can either go one of two ways. One can get very bitter and the kind of negative downward spiral of like, the world is cruel, it's bitter, like, why did this happen to me? I deserve more. Get that anger and that kind of thing. And if that happened, somewhat understandably so, but thankfully, for a variety of reasons, I kind of took the other path. Um, and it kind of gave me an even more profound understanding of the blessing, I guess, in a sense of what we have here, this opportunity to live and whatnot. And so I really kind of just shifted turned the knob, so to speak, on everything. And as I kind of looked back with myself with a lot more kindness, and trying to really more, untease these problems and really sit with this pain I was feeling, and really trying to work on that self acceptance, and that self talk and that kind of thing. And of course, I'm certainly still kind of struggling on some bits of the social piece of things, especially when it comes to clubbing or drinking or those kind of things. Where I think at the end of the day, these things aren't for me. They've never have been for me. But they are so pushed of like, this is what people do. This is just natural. This is what you do. And if you don't do it, then maybe there's something wrong with you. And of course, I know that's not the case. And there's levels to this. There's no black and white. And so I think that's still something I'm trying to figure out day by day. But I think through this whole process, and through my own kind of personal curiosities around religion and greater meaning, has really helped sort of unwinding this. So I think that's a little bit of my personal history. I think a lot of it's probably people can relate to the senses of insecurity, of inner fault. Again, one could make a case against all the algorithms and the capitalism and the economics around making people insecure, especially young forming minds. And that if you kind of if you tap into that insecurity and you keep people uncomfortable, then you can keep them buying and doing things and kind of continually on that treadmill of trying to do more, so they can finally sort of, quote unquote, arrive. Happiness being sort of a place and not a mindset you kind of curate for yourself. Um, and so I guess I'll now kind of shift a bit to my kind of current frame of mind around these ideas of value, of meaning, of maybe religion too. Kind of what I foresee these thoughts leading me in the future, or maybe where I don't see it leading me in the future. But basically, I guess it's maybe it could kind of be guessed is that my whole perspective is kind of shifted in the other direction. And if anyone's read any little bit of Buddhism, right, I think that is kind of where my locus of interest kind of lies currently. I think it has a lot to say on the suffering that is brought through expectation. That expectations are the root of all suffering, right? And once you start putting this pressure on yourself to be a certain way, or for life to go a certain way, or for things to reach a certain milestone, especially if that milestone is dictated by something outside of yourself, like the approval of a lover or your parents, or the amount of money you make, or the car you have, then I think that is innately disempowering, right? You've kind of given away your power to this thing outside of you, and you've allowed it to dictate what will or will not make you happy or content. And I think, looking back and from my own experience, right, I think that is a very dangerous thing to do, because once you give that power away, it can be really hard to get it back, especially when you talk about these kind of dopamine cycles, and these biological things that's really hard for our rational brains to corral. I think I forget who says it, but like I think it's like rationality is slave to the passion, to the passions or something, and that it's really hard to have our rational minds, fight these things. I think that's why it is so important to be very careful about who you give your power to, whether that's like your attention, with the social media and the content and this consumption, or if it's the power over like the meaning you create for your life through what it is you do, your career, and that kind of thing. And so, of course, along those lines, right, I think I've certainly leaned into the belief that all the value we need, all the validation we need, can come from within, come and should come from within us. And only then we can really live with the kind of clarity of what our quote unquote purpose is here. And I might start sounding a little woo woo, and that's okay. I think religion is a very kind of like weird. I think one man's illusion is another man's religion, so to speak. Where it's like once you start agreeing to some of these things, and once they start making sense for you, it's really hard to like go back. Like once you put the glasses on and things just make sense, it's really hard to look back or look at the world in any other way. So I will admit that is again based off my experiences and kind of the pain I have felt and the work I've done to try and find meaning out of that pain. I think I have found a lot of value in the religious piece, in the more religious aspects of life. I don't know if I'd say I am religious. I certainly don't think I could say I am Christian. Though, if God is Catholic, I have taken the sacrament a few times, not knowing that I shouldn't be doing that. So I might be, my fate might already be sealed. Hopefully not, but I do think there is a lot of value in surrendering, so to speak, to something, this higher thing outside of yourself. Like apart from all these kind of materialistic pressures, and these kind of these externalizing sources of validation, and these idols, so to speak, to use that religious term. In that believing in this higher purpose, and that everything happens for a reason, and everything is a lesson that is guiding you on your path, whether it's true in the end or not. I think just the mindset of that, I think, can be very helpful in trying to find that inner sense of drive and of purpose, and rather than listening to these external things. To go off on a bit of a tangent there. But I think I have really, I think one of the frames of thought, or the lines of thought, have really been, coalescing around, I guess, is perhaps not the best way to put it. Is that I've started to think that everyone here has a certain purpose. I think everyone here has a role, so to speak, in this thing we call life. And I think a lot of our time is just kind of spent trying to figure out what that purpose is. And I think we often get really confused, or the whole journey gets confused by these externalized factors. In that we are not given the space and the opportunity to fully sit with ourselves and kind of follow our natural inclinations and our natural abilities and curiosities to our natural conclusion. Right? I think that natural kind of curiosity as a way of being tamped down by the time you're in middle school or high school, as you start being fed these external expectations. And I've really started to believe it, and how great of a shame that is. That for so many people, we have not created the means for them to fully understand and fully achieve their potential. Whether that's as an artist, or a carpenter, or a politician, or or that's like a different, not a career in the traditional sense at all. Just traveling the world. Again, I think everyone has a role to play. And I think I've also kind of grown strongly in this kind of relational sense of meaning, where I cannot be myself if you cannot be you, and that we all live in relation to each other, and that extroverts cannot exist without the existence of introverts, and they all play a role. and is absolutely necessary for the greater whole to exist, right? There are some things that people on this side can understand that these people can't, and so it's important to have all the different spheres of humanity, so to speak, that kind of yin and yang. You can't have one without the other. You can't have pain without. You can't have good without pain, um, and all that kind of stuff. And so I think I thought a lot about that as well, and I think as well, the again, like the more you give up these expectations, the more you kind of give up this pressure on this thing to be what you want it to be, the more it can truly be what you need it to be, and what it is meant for you to be. And so I think in that end, coming from this, I was this perfectionist, kind of like very stressed of like what I need to do to make the most of this, which is still there's an interplay here, because I think, of course, on the one hand I want to make the most of the time I have, but also I don't want to put so much pressure on this to be a certain way that I close myself off to these kind of revelations that are meant for me. Because I've really tried letting go of these expectations, this expectation management of really trying to listen more to these opportunities that the universe or God or the Buddha or whatever is giving to me. And once as I receive them, touching base with myself of like what, and maybe listening less to my mind, my ego, and more to my natural and my body of like what kind of sparks this natural interest in me, what sparks this curiosity, what sparks these natural proclivities, um, and how can I follow these. It's kind of more so the mindset I've been taking. In that as well, I think we as humans, I think we are naturally wired to make meaning out of things, and that I think so much of our time is worrying about if I'm doing the right thing, if this is the right thing for me, or is this what I should be doing. When oftentimes I think you know we can make things matter if we want them to matter, right? If it's a boring job, like, or if it's some if you want it bad enough, you can make meaning out of anything, right? I think you can tie just about anything into this greater sense of life if you wanted to. Be a mundane job, or a sail, a circumnavigation of the world, right? I think we humans are really adept at this practice, and I certainly am. And like, again, like it all makes sense in the rear view mirror. Again, I think we are also primed to make a narrative out of things that makes sense. And so with all those ideas in mind, again, I think it's really helped me just let go and really take solace in who I am, and takes in kind of, again, letting go and like kind of giving my life over to this greater purpose, which on one hand sounds very religious, right? Understanding, and I understand why it would sound like that, and I'm still kind of figuring out that part of it. But I think doing that has allowed me to take a lot more pride and focus a lot more on my internal kind of values, my internal strengths, my interests, and kind of looking at this more from a place of curiosity and interest, versus like the place of repulsion where I was starting from growing up. And I think it's also allowed me to take a second look at some of the things I've kind of some of the doors I maybe prematurely closed to myself, and when it comes to expression or art or creation, where maybe I just thought I wasn't good at this. And now I'm looking back, I was like, oh, if that's not for me, then like that's okay. But maybe I was a little too premature in closing this door, and maybe it's worth a second look. So maybe see what other opportunity is coming my way, because no one knows if these opportunities, right? You might think you're on your life journey, but that life journey might only last 2 years before you go the other way, because you found a new opportunity and another kind of part of you lights up. So I think it is important for us to just follow all these these signals, these signs, wherever they go. Have an idea for your endpoint, but be flexible on how you get there. Right. Again, that idea of putting too much pressure on your life to be a certain way, to follow your dreams, can make more trouble for yourself than it's worth at the end of the day. And so back to that saying, right? Focus on your flowers, and the bees will come. I think that really just, what that means to me, right, is just really honoring the gift that you have of being you. And this is all going to start sounding like pretty like cliche and sappy. But I think this is the cliches that they're cliche for a reason. But I have really come to believe that we are all, again, we are here for a reason, and I think we are all incredibly unique in our interests and our abilities, in our passions, and what a dishonor it is to do anything other than fully grasp, um, fully engage. That's the word. Fully engage with this opportunity we have been given to kind of pull back the layers and try the things, and follow these passions, these interests, this kind of kid-like curiosity and of adventure, to where whatever it naturally concludes. Whether you knew from 4 years old that you wanted to be an artist, and that's what you wanted to do, and like that's your whole 60, 70 years, or maybe it's all every 2 years you're bouncing from place to place, or maybe you just want to like travel and live light and just like see all the stories and the humanity of the world. Maybe you'll write a book out of it. Like maybe that's what God, or that's what you were here to do. Um, I think right, the following this breadth and depth. I think maybe I've said it before that we have the opportunity to live so many lives, uh, where and try so many different things, and oftentimes it just feels like people become a certain age and they just start waiting to die, so to speak. And it's like, well, I think once you stop growing, you stop dying as well. Like once you stop trying to learn new things, and once you start stop pushing yourself, and once you start kind of getting complacent or just trying to keep up with things, I think that's when the sparkle of this whole thing kind of fades away. Which again, right, what a shame that is to engage with this life from any place other than pure gratitude and passion, and vigor. And of course, right, a lot of this depends on the opportunities you're given and your circumstances, and there's a whole side to speak about that. But I think truly, right, law of attraction, again, like I don't know if it's truly like this invisible hand giving you the things that you want, that you wish for. But I do think there's a lot of power in your mindset, and how and where you look at things and where you put your energies. And I think time and time again, as I look back on my life, I have found that all the positive kind of experiences I've had have been bred out of this focusing this energy on myself and what I wanted to do versus what I feel like I should be doing. If it's all it's all the people I got to meet, that I look back and like, oh, this person is like incredibly important to me. And how I am blessed to have them in my life. Like I met them by doing something I wanted to do. Uh, I didn't meet Sarah, one of my closest friends, my mentor. I met her by joining the Holden Center, this leadership center on campus junior year, because I thought it was something I wanted to do, and I thought it was something good, leadership and that kind of thing. I wanted to like push myself, and I knew it'd be a hard position for me to do. I was leading workshops and talking up in front of people, and I was very nervous about that. But it's through doing this hard thing and pushing myself, I got to meet this person, and other people, of course, but in the Holden Center, but her especially. Um, Now, again, I had become this incredible mentor for me who has constantly pushed me to do the hard thing and to push myself and to give me that support of like telling me, I am more capable than I think I am. That if it was not for her, then I may not even be in Peace Corps. She's the one who recommended that I do this and that I push myself. And this would be like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that, if I didn't follow my heart and do these hard things, then maybe I would have never seen her, and maybe my life would look very different. And just another example, one of my closest friends, Devin, who I met through a club for my undergrad degree, my planning degree. We just, what were the chances? We just happened to log in on the same Zoom election for the leadership team of this club in the midst of COVID in 2020 or 2021, and through that, she's become one of my closest friends. who is now studying public health, getting a master's for public health at Harvard, which is crazy. It's like, I think having people like this in my life, like her, who are so driven and passionate, shows me just how far yet I have to rise, um, and to always keep on pushing yourself and doing the hard things and reaching higher. Because again, I think to do any less is to do a disservice to this opportunity we were given. So I think that is briefly two just little examples of the people I've met and the experiences I've had just by kind of trying to better listen to myself and do the hard things as well, and not just do what is expected of me, or to settle um, for out of fear that maybe I might be missing out on something. And maybe my path is taking me in the wrong direction. And I think just finding trust and fully pouring into yourself and what you want and what your abilities are, and what interests you, and just that trust of like you'll figure it out, right? Like the kind of path to the life you want reveals itself as you walk it step by step. Um, and oftentimes the things you want are on the other end of the hard things you don't want to do. And that again, like the instant we stop trying and pushing ourselves, that's when we start to die. I do think spiritually, if not physically. Whatever it is, following your passions, or whether it's being an artist or a lawyer or a mechanic or an engineer or a dancer. I do think you have to follow it like as far as you feel like it leads, and as strongly and with as much vigor and intention and drive as you can muster, to see what you're capable of, and to fully unlock what your purpose here, what your meaning here is to do, uh, what your meaning here is, and what your purpose is here. And so I think for me, I've really stopped. And again, one could argue about the value of planning and of forward looking, and there's a certain time and place for that. But I think for myself, speaking from my experience, often, if half and half, if not more than half of the time, I think this kind of planning has led me worse off. Where I think that it's those who act who get where they want to be more than those who just plan. I think planning is a way of procrastinating in a sense, um, and trying to cover for as much cover for the natural uncertainties of the world. And I think stability and planning. I think the sense is you can only be so prepared, and security and stability is often a myth kind of sold to us to settle, and to settle for these external validators. Um, and that sometimes you just have to like jump and trust that you'll figure it out, and like trust that you packed a parachute. And if you didn't, tuck and roll and figure it out, kind of deal. And trust that you'll make the meaning out of it at the end of the day when you look back. And it'll all lead to what you're meant to do. I think letting go of maybe some of these prior wishes for your life, and just like enjoying the ride and trusting yourself and kind of seeing where you want to go. I think that has kind of made this whole thing a little more fun for me, just a little more less stressful. Like, oh, I'm actually excited to see what these next 2 years have in store, because I'm not pressuring myself to make it a certain way, or I'm not pressuring myself to go to grad school, or to try this career out, or to get this 9 to 5. I think when I graduated university, I think there was definitely a natural path for me to start this 9 to 5 planning career and work my way up, and there may still be time for that. And it's certainly right. There's a certain part of me that was interested in this side of things, or else I wouldn't have done it. And I wouldn't have majored in it. But I think there's also that scratch, especially after my dad's passing, where like there has to be, there's so much more out there, and like I don't think I'm ready to settle down to a big boy job, and the regular 9 to 5 that we were sold in the house and whatnot. And of course nowadays, that kind of dream is kind of breaking. A lot of the cracks are showing, and a lot of people who are sold this facade, are now really regretting it and finding themselves in places of great stress. And so, what does that kind of mean? It's like I got 2 years to think about what I want to do after this. And to a certain extent, I don't see much value in trying to prognosticate out 2+ years on the kind of person I want to be. I'm different today than I'm different, today than who I was, from who I was yesterday, from who I was a week ago, from who I was 2 years ago. And so, as long as I try and follow what naturally interests me and what sounds like a good story, I think at the end of the day, I'm really a person who finds a lot of value in, having these stories to share with people. I think that is more valuable than, whatever car or house or career you have. So I've been trying to follow that more than anything. And so, what interests me, I think sailing the Pacific sounds really cool. Like, that sounds like a really rare opportunity that not many people get to have. Like, if I had the opportunity to do that, like, that'd be amazing. If I had the opportunity to go to Mongolia and see like the falconers there and do their thing, like, that'd be amazing. I'd love to do that. Like, I'm sure there's so much to learn about life in the world from that cultural exchange. Or there's like, if it's like a monastery retreat and like a code of silence for a month, like, I'm sure I'd love to do that too. Or if it's like, renting a car or an RV and like, driving around the United States and meeting all these cool, quirky, unique people and their stories, and just kind of sharing this humanity of people, like, that sounds like that'd be a really amazing time as well. And so I think does any of that kind of make sense as far as careers or money or whatnot? No. But I'm trying to trust myself, and I'd figure out how to make that work, and know that it all makes sense looking back. And of course, as I get older, I'm about to turn 25. Over the hill. Right? I do see this value in giving back as well, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here doing my Peace Corps service in the first place. Is like sharing humanity and trying to be this mentor, and also trusting that so much of the work is just being myself and sharing these stories. And that maybe there will be a point where I want to settle down and go into politics or city development or green energy, or I think I'm very future minded, and there's so much I want to do for this world to leave it a better place for the next generations. And I do see a role in that work for myself. But also, there's so much of a world to explore, and there's so much, like, still have so much vigor and hunger to enjoy this experience I have. And so I think through all that, I've again found a lot of value in just taking ownership of myself, of the cards I've been given, and my strengths, and just who I am. And like, I'm a pretty private guy, and like, that is okay. And, I need to be me so other people can be them. Like, I love I can go the whole day without saying a word to anyone and be incredibly happy. As long as the birds are chirping and the sun is shining and the trees are moving, then I'm about 80% there already. And I do believe that whatever's meant for you will come for you. Whoever's meant for you will be there for you. And that if they're not meant for you, then like, that is God bless them. I wish them well, and like, that is okay. I think even having 3 or 5 close friends, like, that is more than many people can ever wish to have. And so I know who I am. Like, the more pressure put on myself to have a certain amount of friends or a relationship or whatnot, it's to do a disservice to these very things I'm trying to have, in a sense. Because I think to be anything other than our authentic selves is to not do only a disservice to us, but also to a disservice to those we are trying to be with, and that they can only be their authentic true selves. If they can only be their authentic true selves if only we can be our authentic true selves. And that we're not trying to play these facades for each other. I think it just makes life so much easier. These games and these dynamics and did they, didn't they, and all that needless stress. And so if things naturally happen, that's great, and if they don't, then that's okay as well, because I'll find a way to make the most of it anyway. And I definitely think people can also kind of sense in a sense when you're not being authentic. It just makes things a lot harder to do when you're trying to be someone than someone else, rather than yourself, and the extra energy you need to put in. Just why, what's the point of that? And so I think I'm kind of rambling at this point. I think I've kind of grasped the majority of what I'm trying to say, and just the importance of fully honoring yourself and your skills and what you're here to do, what you're put here to do, what your purpose is, and respond to that opportunity, to that ability from a place of curiosity and of love and of grace and of care for yourself and this opportunity you're given, and to operate from a place of strength and of gratitude and of endless ability, rather than this place of insecurity and uncertainty in your relation to others and maybe what life has in store for you. And that, again, as long as you kind of follow what's meant for you and you do the things that you like to do, then you'll naturally, find yourself within the orbit of other people and of other opportunities. Uh, that manifestation, that law of attraction, will kind of get you to where you want to go. That if you plant the flowers, if you add the nutrients, if you cut down the weeds before they get too tall, those bad thoughts, those bad habits. If you don't spend too much time tending to someone else's garden before tending to your own, right? Got to put your own mask on first. Mask on first. If you do all these kind of things, and like the path will kind of reveal itself, right? The leaves will kind of be swept away. You'll see the stones behind you as you begin walking this path. And as long as you do that with intention, and you live every day with value, with love in your heart, and for this opportunity, then more often than not, things will work out okay. At least that's what I kind of tell myself. So I think maybe I've probably forgotten some things I wanted to mention. I think that's probably a good place to end it there. I am just so grateful for this opportunity to live and to be in a place where I am more flexible to enjoy all that life has to offer to me. And I've tried a lot harder to put myself in that space to fully take it on as clear-minded uh, and level-headed as I can. So with that, I will bid you adieu to my second installment of my Pozo Ponderings. I'm curious about anyone else's thoughts about this, or their perspectives, or maybe other things to offer, or things to read, or whatnot. But I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.